Hello, welcome to the podcast. Thanks for joining me. I'm your host, Christopher Gajewski. Let's get naked about mental health. In this episode, I'm going to be going off script, off the reservation. I had other things planned, but it's Suicide Awareness Month. And I recently got triggered. The suicidal thoughts are back, so I thought I would talk about them. At this point, I wish I had the money to talk to a professional. I found a good website, www.betterhelp.com, but it is tough balancing needs and dwindling savings. It's one of my triggers, and I've been triggered. I triggered myself. They say, and I agree, that money can't buy happiness. I always joke that it sure does help, and happiness can be rented for a while. People look at the rich and powerful that suffer and think, what do they have to be depressed about? But it is not about money for some. It is about triggers. For me, it can be about money or lack thereof. Financial stability helps me maintain a mentally healthier lifestyle. For them, it could be any number of things. But let's get into me and see where it leads. I'm seeing a lot of posts about suicide awareness. It's the month for it. Suicide Awareness Month. A lot of the posts talk about reaching out to people to check on them. Call to check on me. You will find a happy, healthy, and perfectly fine guy. It is the facade I wear when the suicidal thoughts come back. You won't find the guy that was overwhelmed last night and this past weekend gave up on this podcast and laid down in bed fully clothed with the lights on and fell asleep, my only escape. Then I woke up this morning wondering who the hell that person was last night. Hey, I screwed up. I opened the door to depression and it came rushing through. And now I'm clicking out of the script that I typically use. So let's just talk, me and you. Suicidal thoughts, as I've said before, are nothing new to me. I've really had them all my life for as long as I can remember. They're just, as I've said in previous podcasts, like gnats on a summer evening. I brush them aside and move on. It's only twice in my life now that the swarm of gnats has become a swarm of hornets. Both the swarm of gnats and the swarm of hornets, no one would ever see. No one would ever know. One person did. The person that I reached out to both times. An old friend of mine's Rachel. First back in, I forget. It was in 2000, I think. Or sometime around there, like 2003. And then just again a couple years back. But the whole thing with suicide is that it starts looking like it's the only option. When you back yourself into a corner, or when I back myself into a corner, it just starts seeming like an appealing option. And like I said, you can talk to me all you want. You can come and visit. You can stop by, take me out for a beer. You would never know. No one ever knows. It's my secret world. It's something that I don't like to share with people because, well, for a couple of reasons. One, the gnats on a summer evening. Like those types of suicidal thoughts, it's like if you called me and asked how my back was feeling. I'm going to say fine. I mean, it hurts. I got the aches and pains. Hey, I'm 51. I've lived a full life. I've hiked and injured myself and worked in various trades, and it hurts. Sometimes I take aspirin for it, and most days I don't, but it typically aches. So if you ask me how my back is doing, as long as I'm not on the floor, I'm going to say okay. It's the same way with the suicidal thoughts typically. Like the thoughts that are rushing back at me, it's just the normal everyday, what I think of as the normal everyday suicidal thoughts. I did find out in a therapy session that I talked about in a previous episode that they're not normal, that most people don't have these thoughts, and that I should bring them up in therapy when I have them. I don't quite understand them myself. It's just a part of my depression. But I've learned throughout the years to just brush the gnats aside and move on and do what I have to do. I now know that things will get better. I hope to never be back in that place that I was back in, I'm trying to recall, 2000 and it was in 2000. It was in 2000 because I know what triggered it then. So let's back up. Let's talk about 1999. There, I really backed myself into a corner. I graduated college in 1997. I was still pretty much of a mess. And I decided to try to save my mom from her manic depression. I had learned a few things. I got her to move in with me into my apartment because she was ill. And I tried to save her. That was my sin, my arrogance. I thought that I could do what no one else could. And it got worse and worse for her. Her illness, it escalated. I also talk about that in a previous episode. Like I said, I'm not going with the script here. I'm just rambling. So keep up with me if you want to. I invite you to. But that's a part of a larger story. In the end, she tried to commit suicide. And she did a damn good job of it. I was laying in bed downstairs and I heard someone bursting through the front door. They were crashing in. So I rushed out and I was immediately shoved by cops back into my room. And I saw my mom on the step and I saw red all over the place. And I'm trying to tell the cop, that's my mom. That's my apartment. And they just got me in. They brought in the paramedics who took away my mom. And then I was left with the cleanup. It was a 2-floor apartment, so I went upstairs. And it was as if someone had taken cans of red paint and splashed it all over the place. The doctors would later say that they don't know how my mom survived. The only thing that they can think of is that she sliced, but she also took a lot of pills. And the pills that she took slowed her heart rate down. And that's really the only thing that saved her. So the blood coagulated. But I was left there in my arrogance, wondering what to do. How do you clean something like that up? I started reaching out to people just because I didn't know. It was a biohazard. I had a mattress that was soaked in blood. My kitchen, my bathroom, because she had paced. And I could hear her pacing through the night with no idea of what was going on. And then that is about when I started my downward spiral. What a doctor would later call it a period of decompensation. I love that word. I don't know why, but I'm fascinated with the word decompensating. How I describe it is my mind was shredding. All my defenses, all my coping mechanisms were just gone. They were just being shredded by the horror that I saw. I had finally gotten a job after college working for a newspaper as a reporter. That job went to hell. I just couldn't think anymore. I couldn't put thoughts together. So I didn't have that job anymore. So I got a job as a bouncer at a local strip club. It paid the bills. Then every other week I would drive 100 miles or so to go and work in an orthodontic lab. It was just simple work. It was work that I could do, but I was still in this period of decompensation. I was struggling. I didn't reach out for help. I didn't know what to do, what to think, what to say. And if anyone had come up and asked me, as a few people did, Chris, how are you doing? The answer was always the same. I'm fine. I'm doing okay. Now, the previous year, I had gone down to Florida for a friend of mine's wedding. I had gotten stuck there for a week. It was the blizzard. It was a big blizzard in Philadelphia. And I just remember this time because no one was really upset that I was stuck in Florida. But I was stuck there for a week with friends who had just gotten married. They had heard about what happened with my mom, and they kept on inviting me down. They wanted me to move down there with them. And I kept saying no, because I knew what was happening. I could feel that downward spiral. I knew that a bottom was coming. I couldn't do anything about it. I just knew that it was coming. So I kept saying no. They were really good people, really good friends, and they kept on pushing and pushing and pushing for me to move down there with them. So I finally said, okay. I packed up, threw all my stuff in my car, and drove down there with them. I got away from Philadelphia. I got away from the nightmare. I perked up a little bit. I felt better with the traveling, which I knew that I would. I was surrounded by friends, and they introduced me to their friends, and their friends were just fantastic people. And we would sit around at night and during the day, and they just wanted simple things out of me. They wanted me to find a job and get established. They gave me a room to sleep in. They fed me. I didn't bring much money with me. That was, they were basically supporting me, which is one of my triggers. So I already had all this stuff going on, and then I'm encountering another trigger that I can't care for myself. So the spiral picked up again. And again, if they asked me, and they did a lot, and if any of you had run into me and asked me, Chris, are you okay? I would have said, I'm fine. I'm doing okay. I got a job working as a waiter for I forget what it's called, a catering service. And we would cater parties. I was making I was making good money, decent money, but then I started to screw up. As I mentioned in previous episodes, one of my addictions is strip clubs. So the money that I would make, I would pay to escape. I never did drugs. I was never really a big drinker outside of college, but I liked my strip clubs. I liked the fantasy. I liked the escapism that I could find there. And I found myself going there more and more and more, which just made me feel like a bigger and bigger piece of shit, because I'm living with these people who invited me down here, and I'm not doing the basic things that I need to better myself. I'm spiraling down. Then one night or one day, I forget where they were. I can't recall. But I know that I decided to end my life. There's a story about it. Of course, there's a story about everything with me. But I was fully prepared to end my life. I was just in pain. I was a piece of shit. I was living off these people. I was burdening them with my troubles. I was hurting them. So what better way? I mean, what other option did I really have? So there was a plan, and I really found a lot of peace in that plan. And if you had called me at that time and asked me, Chris, how are you doing? I would have said, everything is fine. Because I wouldn't have wanted to burden you. I wouldn't have wanted to hurt you. I didn't want to be talked out of it. I wanted to continue with the plan. So I was there, ready to do what I'm going to do. And just something happened. Like there was something in the back of my head that said, this is wrong. Reach out and explain it to someone. Make somebody understand you. So I reached out to a friend of mine's, Rachel. I called her. She was living up in the D.C. area at the time. And we had been friends for a long time. And I told her my plan. I told her what I was about to do. And I wanted her to realize that it made sense. And it didn't make sense to her. She couldn't understand it. Or maybe she did understand it. Because she didn't try to talk me out of it. That was the interesting thing that I found. She didn't try to talk me out of it. She acknowledged that I was in pain. She acknowledged that I was in trouble. She acknowledged that I was in crisis. But all that she asked for was more time. Chris, she asked me, all that I'm asking you for is to give me one more year. That made absolutely no sense to me. I had lived this life. It was just painful because when you're that deep in the depression, your life compresses. And my life compressed into a period where in 2000 I was 29, and all that I could remember was that last couple months, or that last month, that last week, that day. And my life became that day. And that day was awful. I couldn't imagine the 29 years that had occurred before and all the good things in it, all the family, friends, and loved ones. I couldn't imagine any future that I was happy. But Rachel persisted. She never asked me anything. All that she kept on repeating was, give me one more year. If you love me, you'll give me one more year. For love for me, give me one more year. It still didn't make any sense to me. And then she hit me with the, look, if you've done this for this long, what's one more year? You can do one more year. And that kind of made sense to me. It's like, if I could do it for 29 years, then one more year was no big deal. So I agreed. And the people I was living with never knew this happened. I was living with them. They were friends. But I did start to do certain things. I went and saw a crisis counselor. The crisis counselor immediately put me on meds, Zoloft, and we started talking. And a lot came out in those first few therapy sessions that I really should have considered. That I really should have continued. The therapist, for one thing, he was just shocked that I was even able to move, that I wasn't in a bed, just unable to move. And I don't know, I've always considered that both a blessing and a curse, because if I'm unable to move in a bed, people can point at that and say, there's something really wrong. It's something that I've experienced with my mom. But because I was able to keep moving, because I was able to keep working, I could continue to react. All that my friends that I was living with saw was just a piece of shit, someone that was living off of them. So I'm finally starting to feel a little bit better. I'm starting to take meds. I'm starting to think more clearly. And I come home one night and they asked me to move out. It was time. I didn't try to explain. I didn't try to reason with them. I just accepted it because I felt that it was all that I deserved. So I moved out. They did help me find a place with a friend of theirs. And then I started to do a little bit better just because I was away from them. So I was away from people that I was hurting. And then I went away one weekend, I think, and I came home and there was an very, very, very ugly party with a lot of drugs going on. My cousin lived close by. I called her, told her what was going on, and she said to get her ass to pack up my car, leave everything that I could, and to just come to her place and we would figure it out. And that's what I did. So the crisis was over. I moved back to Philadelphia after that, or to Maryland, I forget which. But I started working again, got better, stopped therapy, stopped doing a lot of the things that I should have been continuing to do, but I found other addictions. I found work. And I was able to throw myself into work so much that I forgot about the depression. I did continue to take my meds. The meds helped. And again, previous episode, the mental health triangle, psychiatry or meds on one side, counseling or therapy, psychologist on another side, and self-help as the base. So all I was doing was just the one side, the meds, but I was doing okay with it. For a long time, I was doing okay with it. But because I wasn't doing everything that I was supposed to be doing, the depression caught back up to me. I was financially stable. That's one of my triggers. So I wasn't triggering that. But there was other things that were just wrong in my life. My marriage, my working relationship, my partnership. I just got exhausted. I got really, really exhausted. And so I gave up on everything again. By this time, I'm 47, I guess, or 48. But I just started planning again to kill myself. I had given Rachel her year, and then again, my life compressed. I didn't think about the intervening years or the future years. All that I knew is that I was 48 and I was just so damn exhausted. I didn't see any way out. So I had planned on a nice little adventure, just one last hurrah, and then find some nice quiet place in Europe to end my life. Just find some nice quiet beach. Again, I'm around people all the time. I was living with my wife. I was seeing friends and family. And they were always asking, how are you doing? How are you doing? The answer was always the same. I'm doing pretty damn good. When I started giving up everything, and when I sold my business, they're like, is everything okay, Chris? I'm just like, yeah, just everything's fine. When I asked my wife for a divorce, everyone was asking, is everything okay? Because everyone thought that my life was perfect. Because from the outside looking in, it looked like I had everything that I wanted. I had everything that I needed. I had the nice house, the beautiful wife, all the pretty things, and everything that goes with it. Inside, I was already dead inside. There was no passion in my life. There was no excitement about anything. And I just figured it was a good time. I lived 49 years. I had had a really good run. There were a lot of good things in my life. There were some bad things in my life. And I was just exhausted. And the exhaustion just got to be way too much for me. And then again, if anyone had asked, and they did, I'm fine. So the plan at the end of 1999 was I sold my business, helped buy my wife a new house. In trade, I got the current house, and I would get the proceeds from that one. It was up for sale. It was going to sell. I was going to take pretty much end in the offer because I didn't want anything. I gave my wife everything that she wanted, which really pissed off my family and friends because they were like, why are you doing this? Why don't you get a lawyer? Why don't you keep some stuff? Answer is simple enough. I was planning on killing myself. What the hell did I need it for? I mean, seriously, all that I wanted was the cash so I could go and enjoy myself in Europe for a little bit. I had made some plans. I was going to go with my family to Poland for a couple weeks. Then for the month of May, I had an apartment rented on the Adriatic coast, on the Adriatic Sea on the coast of Italy. Then I had an apartment rented in Greece for a month. Like I said, I had just sold my business. I was about to sell my house, so I'm sitting on a good amount of cash. And then Murphy intervened. Murphy's Law. He doesn't like me. I don't like him. Anything that can go wrong will go wrong at the worst possible time. The pandemic hit. Yes, I took the pandemic personally. It is absurd to take a pandemic personally, but I did. Because I had given away everything. I was planning on being away and not coming back. So I'm sitting in this very large house, very empty house. I had a chair, a bed, a sofa, and a TV. And I really think that was about it. Oh, and the coffee maker, of course. And then the pandemic hit. Everything shut down. Europe shut down. The world shut down. I wasn't going anywhere. What do? I started writing again. I'm starting to reach out to people just because I knew that I wasn't okay, and I wasn't telling them about it, but I knew that they weren't okay because, as my one friend, a psychiatrist, said, when things like pandemics or trauma happens, the best people to talk to are the people who are screwed up because we know what to do. We know how to handle this stuff. So I started to reach out on social media, Facebook, started stopping by people's houses, picking up supplies for them. It was a very lonely time, but it was also a very peaceful time. I was friends with my neighbors, but because I was going out so much and doing all the scavenging for everyone, I wasn't invited into anyone's clubs, which I didn't blame them one bit. And then I started reading at night. And one of the books that I've read was Travels with Charlie. John Steinbeck, 1960, went looking for America. I didn't have anything so grand planned, but this thought appeared in my head. I can't go to Europe. Why not drive cross country? But I would do one thing better than that. I would keep going. It wouldn't just be cross country. It would be every state. I would drive to all 50 states. So that's what I did. And I did write a book about it, working on the final edition now with an editor. And I sprinkle hints throughout the book of what the plan was. The plan was to go on the last adventure, then find a nice quiet place to kill myself. While I was out there in America, I found something. I can't say it was hope, because it wasn't hope, but it was a path to hope. That's the best way I can describe it, because when you're on the road, as I was for 152 days, close to 40,000 miles, just you in your car with the radio playing, you really start thinking about a lot of things. And I started thinking about life. I thought a lot about my exhaustion, my marriage, the things that I had gone wrong, and the places where I had gone wrong. Excuse me, just had to take a sip of water. I typically don't do that during an episode, but like I said, I'm free-forming it here. So bear with me. Okay, so back to traveling across the United States. So I found something. I started to put together the pieces of what was missing in my life. I had had the conversation with Lance about a year before and had put together the mental health triangle, and I started to apply it to my life. I learned things out there about communication, about intimacy, about being intimate with myself. Like I said, I was still depressed. I was still very, very, very exhausted. And the doctors were not helping. Because especially during COVID, I had to jump through hoops to get my medication refilled. When I could get it refilled, I had to pay a lot of money for it. But I just kept going. And then I got done all 50 states, wrapped things up. And then I just realized that I wasn't ready to kill myself yet. But I needed a home. And by this point, I am almost completely screwed. Because there is a funny side to suicide. Sorry if you are offended by that, but I find it hilarious. I didn't follow through with my plan. I had a very well thought out plan, and I didn't follow through, which meant that I had given away everything. I had given away everything that I owned, didn't have anything left, and all that I had left was a little bit left on my credit cards. So I moved to Texas. Some friends of mine's there. They wanted me to be close to them. It just seemed like a good idea at the time. I liked the idea of moving to Austin. A lot of people felt that I should move to Austin, but all this is in my book. And so I moved there, and I hit another crisis, the same crisis that I typically hit. I'm out of money. Financial stability is one of the cornerstones of my mental health, and I didn't have it. I started looking around for work, completely ran out of money at one point, borrowed money just to get by. And then I did finally manage to find a job that paid pretty well. So I'm missing a part. The swarm of gnats. So in Texas, before I found the job, the swarm of gnats turned into the swarm of hornets again. And I really wanted to kill myself again. And then again, it's nothing personal. It's not like I did reach out to a couple people and they were upset with me and they were like, Chris, we love you and we want you to stick around. And they just really pissed me off because it wasn't about them. It was about this pain that I was in, this exhaustion and this pain. And I didn't know how to describe it. I did know how to describe it. It's like walking through a swarm of hornets and they're stinging me and stinging me and stinging me. Thoughts hurt. I'm serious. Thoughts would hurt me because I was constantly going back to all the ways that I screwed up. And every time, like the thought, like I'm sitting there one night, it was really ridiculous thing, but I'm sitting there. Well, no, I'm not sitting there. I'm in a fetal position on my sofa, just crying and just shaking, and then all of a sudden a thought hit me, and I just thought it was funny because I started thinking of Tom Cruise in Top Gun. I don't know where the hell it came from, but that's what it reminded me of. If you've ever seen Top Gun or really any movie where there's fighter jets involved, and that beeping where the pilot is trying to get missile lock, and the plane is dodging and diving and trying to avoid missile lock. That's what it was like in my house at night. Like, I'm literally physically moving and trying to think about other things, and I'm dodging, and I could hear the beeping, beep, 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 and then beep, missile lock. The thought would hit, and it would just tear me up. I would collapse, and then I would get up and start hearing the beeping again. So what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? And I'm dipping and diving, and the whole time I'm in touch with people. The whole time I'm talking to friends and I'm talking to family. I got my friends that live a mile away, and I'm spending time with them and their kids, and I'm loving it. And the whole time I'm thinking, yeah, it's time to check out. I've had enough. I've just really had enough of this shit. And then I started working again, started to build up the financial stability again, started to get things again. And things started to improve. But then again, I still wasn't doing the right things. I went back on my meds. I found, and I had to jump through hoops to get them. That's another story in and of itself. But I got the right combination. I started doing some of the self-help with the yoga. I found out that I couldn't walk every day anymore because I did something to my back. So it was recommended to me by a physical therapist to not walk. So I wasn't getting that kind of exercise, but I was doing the yoga, I was on the meds, but I wasn't doing the third part of the mental health triangle. I wasn't getting counseling. I wasn't figuring out that last piece. But a year went by. Rachel's year. Again, thanks, Rachel. Because I did call her on one night again, and I'm like, I'm there again, and I don't want to be here again. And she talked me through it, and again, just asking for time. And she was like, you know what this is like. You know you'll get through this. You know you'll get past it. So don't do it, and just one more year. So I did it. I got through another year. About that time, I lost my job. Long story. But I saw the writing on the wall. They hired me at a very high salary, and I trained all the people at a very low salary to take my place, among other things. But it was time to move on. Still not doing all that well, so I got rid of everything again. At least this time I didn't give away everything. I actually sold most of the stuff. I gave away a few things. But then I was invited to come here to Tijuana to help out a friend with their orthodontic lab here. Thought it might be something interesting because I wasn't ready to go back to Philly yet. I did make a drive there a couple times, and there was just too much history there. There was just too much there. So I moved to Tijuana instead. Started working for a buddy of mine. That went on for about, I guess, about a month and a half. I mean, it was an ideal situation. He's paying me American money. I'm living in Mexico where the American dollar is very strong. I could start reestablishing myself. I had brought savings and the money that I got from selling stuff, so I was doing pretty good. And then he fired me. We got into it. We had a differing opinions of the way to run a lab. And he got hot one day and he fired me. And then to my credit, I told him to go fuck himself after he fired me. But then I'm here in Tijuana. Don't have a job. Living in a nice apartment. And then I really started to work on things. I started to do things. It's like I can still remember the day that he fired me. I'm walking home. because I live in walking distance of the lab. And I'm walking home and I'm just thinking, okay, you're depressed. You just lost your job again. Things aren't working out again. And then I got home and I realized I was so friggin' happy that, and I wasn't depressed because there was nothing to be depressed about. I was miserable at the job. And he fired me and he set me free, and I started to work on my book again, and I started to do this podcast, and I started to work on things and to live again and to do the things that I needed to do. And I'm watching my money, so I didn't get back into the yoga. I did make an appointment right before I got fired to start with the BetterHelp.com. But then when I lost my job, I canceled that because I knew I had a limited amount of money. And then I just started to live. Excuse me. Need another sip of my water. And then so things were going well. Made friends in the apartment building. Was keeping in touch with the family and friends back home. And everything was really great. And then I got up, I guess a couple weeks ago now. And then I realized this interesting thing. I tried to explain it to someone, and it's really hard to explain, but I knew what was happening. I'm not a stupid person. I knew that I was spending money and I didn't have any money coming in. I knew I had savings, but I knew that my money was lasting a lot longer than it would have in Pennsylvania. And everything was really ideal here. Like, I'm comfortable, I'm safe, I'm feeling good, I'm working on things that make me happy. I don't have to jump through hoops to get my meds. I just go down to the pharmacy and I can get them over the counter. For the one that I do need a prescription for, I had to pay $25 for a doctor to say okay. That was it. So everything's going good. And then about 2 weeks ago, I checked my bank account because rent was coming, because the beginning of September, Suicide Awareness Month, was coming up. And I looked at my bank account. And an interesting thing, I realized that I had enough money to pay rent, but that was it. And there's all the other bills. There's the car payment, there's the meds, there's the whole food thing and things like that. So that's when the depression hit. Again, if you would have called me and asked me, if you would have reached out to me, how are you doing, Chris? I'm doing fine. If you'd pressed, I would have still said I was doing fine. It goes back, I guess that therapy would really help at this point, because it goes back to the whole thing about just that I didn't feel I deserved anything. I didn't feel that I deserved any help because I created this. This was my own creation. I mean, yeah, I was doing a job search. I was looking online. I was reaching out to some people. I was putting out some applications, but I was really concentrating on all the stuff that doesn't pay. And I was going through money. So I'm in this jam and I don't know what to do. And I don't feel I deserve anything. And these suicide thoughts came back. But not the hornets, just the gnats on a summer evening. I kept on brushing them aside. I had a couple bad nights. Reached out to someone. I did get a loan. He doesn't think it's a loan, but I know it's a loan. And it just put me into a place where asking for help is hard for me. I don't know if you know this, but I have a Patreon page and all kinds of stuff going on for you to support this podcast if you want. And it's hard for me to even ask for that because I don't feel I deserve it. I don't feel that I can ask for help. I feel that I need to do it on my own because that's the way that I've done everything. I've done it on my own. But the truth is, I haven't done it on my own. Besides Rachel, I mean, I come from this huge, loving family. I have wonderful friends in my life, Papa Bear and Mary and just these fantastic people in my life. So I haven't done it alone, but I've worked for everything that I've gotten. And when I gave up on everything and gave away everything, and then now I'm looking at the consequences of the things that I did, I just think to myself, well, you put yourself in this mess. You pick yourself up and you get yourself out of this mess. I didn't want to be homeless. So I reached out for help, got the help with the understanding that I'm going to start doing things right now. So I might be moving back to Philadelphia. Really don't want to yet. Possibly I do. I don't know. But then it all came down to this podcast. I'm on episode 9. I feel good about doing this. This is the first one I'm doing without a script. How am I doing? And just the depression it's just hitting me. I mean, I'm taking my meds every day, but I'm being triggered. The lack of money, the having to ask for help, the being a burden on people, knowing that when I do move back up to Philly, if that's where I go without finding a job, that I do have a job waiting for me, but I don't have a place to live. So I'm going to have to ask other people. I'm going to have to ask for help. And then it just all got to me the other day where I had planned on doing a different podcast, talking about different things, and I just couldn't do it. I couldn't write anything. I couldn't prepare anything. All that I could do was just what I did. I laid down in bed with the lights on, fully clothed, and I fell asleep, saying the hell with it. I quit. I ain't doing this no more. And then I got up this morning thinking, who the hell was that last night? Don't let that person back in. Just don't let them back in. You know what you got to do, Chris. You got to get the counseling. You got to keep up on the meds. You got to get into the self-help. Find the yoga studio once you have money again. Start doing it at home. Start doing anything. I'm starting to walk again. So I'm getting there. And again, at any point in time, if you had called me, if you had checked in on me, if you had asked me how I was doing, I would have said fine. If you call me tomorrow and ask me, how are you doing, Chris? I'm doing okay. I'm fine. I'm getting there. I'm getting by. And that's really the best that you'll get from me because I'm 51 now. I've been through this. I've been down this road many, many, many times. I don't want to go down this road anymore. I want to start putting together a better life for myself. And it's about the triggers. It's about avoiding the triggers. And one of the triggers for me is that financial stability. I got to start working again. I got to start adulting again. So I've been working a lot on my resume. That's what I did all weekend instead of putting together this podcast. Working on things, reaching out to business contacts. And I guess that's really the end of the podcast. I mean, I do understand if you're in crisis and if people are asking you if you're okay and you're just saying that you're fine, that's okay too. But just understand, like I do, that you're not fine. But there are ways to get help and there are ways to get through this. It might take a year. Hell, for me, it might take 50. But it's a hell of a ride. I mean, there's a lot waiting out there when you don't isolate, when you take care of yourself, when you understand what your triggers are and avoid them. If you can't avoid them, if you learn better coping strategies. That's why I should be practicing what I'm preaching. You need to reach out to someone like BetterHelp.com. Find yourself a good therapist that you can work with, that you can retrain your mind. Go for walks, work out, do yoga, take the damn meds. There are side effects, but what are the options? There are other treatments out there now. There's new things coming out. There's a lot of exciting things happening out there. Suicide is just, it's not an option. It shouldn't be an option. I mean, there's the whole other side of suicide, of people wondering why the people that they loved committed suicide. And I want to tell them people, it is not your fault. There's nothing that you could have done. Because if you had gone to them right before they committed suicide and said, "How are you doing?" they would have looked up and said, "I am doing okay. I am fine." So with that, I'm going to wrap up this podcast. I'll post it. I don't know how it's going to sound. I don't know how it's going to come out. I'll give it a quick listen to. It's actually ranking as one of my longest podcasts. But if you do want to help me out, like I said, it's hard. If you're getting anything out of this, go check out my website, thechrischronicles.com. Simple enough. CHRIS chronicles.com. I have a Kickstarter campaign on there. There are ways to contribute through a Patreon account because it's going to take a long time before I get sponsorship for this or I get the numbers that I need to even look for sponsorship. But there are ways that you can help if you want to. If you have any questions for me, post them. I got links on my website. You can subscribe there. You can write to me there. I think even my phone number's on there. So I'm going to call it a day. I'm going to call it an evening. I'm going to take my medication. I'm going to get undressed and get underneath the blankets tonight and turn off all the lights. And I'm going to wake up tomorrow and I'm going to get back to living because that's what I really got to get back to on because that's what I really need to get back to. But I got to start doing it right. There's a wrong way to do it and a right way to do it, and I've been doing it the wrong way, which opened up the door for the depression to come back and the suicidal thoughts to come back. So I guess that I'll end this with saying, no, I'm not okay, but I'm getting there. I'm going to keep on talking. I'm going to reach out to the people that I need to reach out to. Maybe I might not be talking about this, but just talking and just keeping in touch and just knowing and remembering who I am and what I've accomplished and what I still have yet to accomplish. And this web of people that care about me and love me. Just like everyone out there, the depression wants to force you. It wants to change your reality. It wants to make you think that you are completely alone, that you're a burden. And you're not. You're not. we're just a little bit messed up. We got covered in stuff, and we got to find our authentic selves. And there are ways to do it. So, with that, as always, aloha. Thanks for joining me.